Amy Schumer stars in The Humans. I'm David Buchanan with Gold Derby. Aimee, it is such a pleasure to talk to you today. And I wanted to talk first and foremost about The Humans as a family film, because all of the performances in the film are so lived in. And I was wondering, what about the character of Aimee, same name spelled differently, what about the character of Aimee really kind of did you connect with immediately and helped you kind of establish that character right from the jump?
Well, the writing, Stephen Karam's writing, who also directed the film, was so like the dream. I did a 2-year Meisner intensive after college with Bill Esper. And that's all about living truthfully under imaginary circumstances and putting all your attention on the other person. And these words just really set you up to do that. And I just love this character. I aspire to be more like her. She was such a peacemaker and wants, I can relate to some parts of it just with my own family, but I think she's just like a little sweeter, a little less harsh than I am, a little softer. And I just loved her. And I loved her, she's gotten a real dose of reality, but she still has some hope. And I appreciated that about her, whereas I have none.
Yeah, you mentioned Stephen Karam's screenplay. He's adapting the film from a play of his, and you've done a lot of theater throughout your career. And you also did Broadway just a few years ago and earned a Tony nomination. Congratulations on that.
You're right.
So I was just wondering how that experience of doing theater, especially on Broadway, helped you kind of grapple with Stephen's words, because it really is such a beautifully faithful translation of the play to the screen.
Yeah, agreed. Doing theater, I think on the Broadway level, it's so hard. And my show was 90 minutes, no intermission. And I have one of my best friends, Laura Benanti's, in these shows that are like 4 hours and, every night, like her kid dies or something. And I'm like, oh, I could never do it. But all the theater really prepared me for this role and that training at the Esper Studio, because this was a different project than anything I've done before, where usually we have no time. The technicalities are really important. So I was asking him, well, what's the shot, and like wanted to know what the coverage of the scene was going to be. And he almost didn't want to tell me, because it was like, just live this out and don't worry about it. And I'm also used to being at the, in the position where I'm making all the decisions. So it was kind of incredible to just get to prepare and show up and do my job on set and then go home and see my, at the time, 3-month-old. And so, this was the dream. It was like getting to do theater. And we shot it mostly in order. It was like, there were just so many lovely aspects to this. We got 2 weeks of rehearsal. It was a different process than I've done, experienced before.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a few questions about Stephen's process as director. And you're just touching on it a bit in terms of where he places the camera, because it's such an intimate film. It's all set in this bi-level apartment. But he gives us a lot of distance and space. The camera is not necessarily where you would expect it. So I was just wondering, as you were doing these scenes, and many of them are large ensemble scenes, do you know where the camera is at all times? And how liberating is it to perform when you might not really be worried about, playing to the camera?
Well, I was worried the first couple weeks. I really was. And, I was kind of buzzing on set and asking the other actors, is this difficult? Has anybody else had this before? And then you really just have to give yourself over and trust your director. Usually you want to protect your own performance. It's like you have to be your own advocate, but Stephen is such a talented director. And I do think, thank you for saying that compliment about the performances in this film. And I agree, I'm proud of my performance, and I'm so proud of my fellow actors. He just really set the stage literally for us to get to be as truthful as possible. And I really think it paid off.
Yeah, there are some incredibly deliberate, I mean, everything is deliberate, obviously, with what he's doing, but he's very careful about when he does close-up shots in the film. And there are at least two of your character, and they're beautifully kind of constructed where you're on your phone and we see the reflection of your phone in your glasses. And they're just beautifully introspective moments. So I wanted to ask you, what was it like talking to Stephen about, okay, why these close-ups? What am I trying to convey? You know, without giving away the mystery of, you know, what you're doing, you know, what was
Right.
the kind of conversation about finding those shots and those moments?
Well, in those moments, he was talking to me and telling me what they were seeing, you know, just to make sure that I was tilted through and all that. But um, I think, you know, I was just living it out, but I think the effect that it had was that you almost feel, I think you really can feel and identify with what my character is feeling. Like that, for me, like this is a little bit of a spoiler, but just uh, when you have your heart broken, like the pain is physical. It's not just whatever, it hurts. It hurts to breathe. And so the breathing, the labored breathe, like, you know, that kind of, I just really related to that. And I just thought, you know, it's like such a moment you feel so unguarded and unappealing. And I I just connected to that. And it's funny also because there's a moment where the camera goes down through the floor, and that wasn't like, you know, effects or anything. It's, there was a hole in the floor, and so I'm straddling the hole in the floor while living this out. And the camera, everybody's trying not to die in the hole in the floor. And so there was a lot technically going on there, but I just thought his choices were so beautiful, and that they really worked, especially in that instance.
Oh yeah, no question. And let's talk about, again, light spoilers, but let's talk about the heartbreak and that absolutely heartbreaking scene of your phone call with your ex, which is
Yeah.
such, I think, like an emotional climax of the film. And also must be very challenging because you are performing it as a monologue by yourself. So,
Yeah.
and I know that's something you're obviously comfortable doing, but what, you know, how do you approach that and hone it and kind of find those emotional beats?
By really preparing. We did get 2 weeks of rehearsal before we started filming, and were asked to be off book before we started rehearsal. So to be completely off book and be really confident in your lines. And I had spoken to Stephen before the rehearsal, and I thought it was really important that I know exactly what was being said on the other end, and thinking about the nature of exactly what our relationship had been. And a lot of times I would ask a question, even like, how much money do I make? You know, I just want to know who, and he would say, well, how much do you think you make? You know, he really was, held our hands and guided us toward crafting our own characters. And for that, for that phone call, I um I knew what I knew what I believed was being said on the other end of that line. And I also understand and connect to the desperation of those, that like a moment of weakness where you're just looking for any sort of hope or comfort. And and just live that out. And it was like such such a beautiful opportunity for an actor to be given the chance to do that. It's like I just it's so satisfying, and it's like the dream. And you you know, you rarely get that. So yeah, I'm just still so appreciative that, because I think, you know, people definitely think of me in a certain way, and it's hard to undo that. And we're all like that. I'm like that, but I'm so glad that they gave me the chance.
Yeah, and you follow up that scene with a lovely exchange with Richard Jenkins, who plays your father in the film. Um, it's just it's such a complex scene. It's emotional, but it's also, you know, it has your kind of trademark wit in it too at the kind of button of the scene. Can you just talk about working with Richard and also just working with this entire incredible ensemble?
Yeah, definitely. that button to the scene, I again just like really relate to it. And the moments in life, I'm 40 now, and these moments come where, you just, when you're a kid, you're like, you just think you're invincible and that everything is going to definitely work out. And once that reality creeps in, and that, it's just so painful and shocking. And God, working with Richard Jenkins, it's just like, I just love him so much. And we all got really close doing this. Nobody went back to their trailers in between scenes. We sat together for hours just enjoying each other. And sometimes it was just in silence. But my dynamic with Richard is that I love to make fun of him and he loves to be made fun of. And so, kind of the way I do with my own dad. Just early on, we all had this dynamic, this familial, really fun, including Stephen Yen, who I just love. And we all just hit it off like crazy. And we're impressed and supportive, and just we're rooting each other on. It was such a dream. We have this text chain that we have had since we shot, and we, this is 2.5 years ago. We still really keep in touch and send pictures, and June Squibb is the star, and Jane Howdyshaw. I mean, that the moment she's looking at those desserts, I think that visual will just be in all of our minds for the rest of time.
Yeah, I mean, you're answering a question I was going to ask about. How do you just forge family that quickly? Because, obviously the ensemble that did it off Broadway and on Broadway had years and years of 8 shows a week to really, develop the family dynamics, and you had much less time.
Right.
But I guess I'll also ask too, how helpful was it to have Jane, who did the show off Broadway and on Broadway, to kind of anchor the film, and also help you all understand, the characters if you had questions, or how useful was she as a resource?
She couldn't be lovelier or better to have gone through this process with. And just, I really think it was something kind of magical. Like, it was just automatic. And she, well, I think it was a different experience for her too than it had than the stage production had been. And there wasn't much, I think, like, some of us asked some questions. I had never seen the stage production. Beanie had, she loved it. And I was grateful I hadn't, because I didn't want to be trying to emulate Cassie Beck, who had originated the role, who is an incredible performer. And we keep trying to work together. But I think her stability, like, we just all showed up to be in the same film, nobody was doing it. And that was really Stephen's casting and magic and luck. It was just, and I think probably some following Jane's lead of just the realism and how lived in it was for her. And just, I love when Jane and Richard are just sitting there and kind of laughing together. Just, you can just see what is this couple like alone, and it's like, oh, they enjoy each other, they're friends too. And all the moments feel like you're a fly on the wall, but that one especially sticks with me. Yeah, it was, I think none of us were trying to emulate the stage production, even though it had been so coveted and loved, and I think won for best play, and Jane had won the Tony. Yeah, I think we were all really interested in creating a new work.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something, when I talked to Stephen about it, it is so close to the stage play, but completely reimagined for film. It totally feels like its own
I want to see it. I want to go to the Lincoln Center Library one of these days. I also haven't seen my Broadway show on there. And I really want to see mine, because that night I had kind of yelled at someone in the front row for eating peanut M&Ms. just so loud, you know, and they were like, Aimee, they're filming tonight. And I was just like, well, this is crazy I was like, really? And he's all right, sorry.
I will, if I check it out, I will let you know
Okay.
how that moment translates to the
I wonder
archive.
if they cut it out. I hope not. I think that would be pretty fun to see.
Live performance.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you too, another kind of mild plot spoiler. 9/11 kind of haunts so much of the film, as we, you know, learn in kind of fragments throughout. So just wanted to ask how much that experience for the character kind of informed your performance, and also, you know, obviously for Richard too, but as the two characters kind of most intimately affected by it, you know, how much was that in the back of your mind as you were shaping the character and her, you know, how she kind of sees the world now?
Yeah. Well, I was personally in college in Baltimore when 9/11 happened, even though I'm from New York. So I remember using a different near-death experience that I had, sort of to imagine and prepare. And and Scott Rudin was a producer on this. And I think we probably aren't supposed to mention that, but he was, and he bought me a fantastic book about it was like all these essays combined of people who different people's experiences from 9/11, and reading that was really helpful too. Yeah, and I think it definitely affected my character differently than it did Richard's, because I think almost dying is probably like a lot easier than thinking your child is dead, you know.
Mm.
um yeah, that's one of the good things about, you know, I only have one child. And if anything ever happens to him, I'll just kill myself, and I can. So you know, if that's a help, is that's an answer to that question. If that's the pull quote from this, if Aimee, you know, she will kill herself.
No, but I do want to just mention that even though, you know, we're having a bit of a heavy conversation about some of the more, you know, resonant themes, it is also a very funny film.
Oh,
Um,
good.
so how much, I mean, you know, like the pig smash scene, so many of these scenes, and even just in these kind of everyday moments, the humor really comes through. So how much did you want to bring kind of your sensibilities to the role and the humor of the role, and find and kind of, you know, elevate those moments?
I think uh I think what I share with my character that was clear in the script is that she is sarcastic. And so I, you know, had sort of a, but you know, she doesn't have the license to share it as much as I do. So this sort of like muted sarcasm that I'm sure her family, I'm sure her coworkers don't even know she's funny, you know. But her family knows, so she can show that a little more. But this was one of those scripts where all of the and I mean, that was all scripted. There, that was all in there. So usually when I'm in a role, I can, you know, and usually I've written it, so I can change it how at my will. But it was all really deliberate, and so just being really confident about her perspective was a great guide and tool to, you know, think about what is she, yeah, what is she doing here, what does she want from this, what does she want to come from these words. And she's so careful with what she exposes her family to. So yeah, I think in that moment it's very much like letting them know that she has some hope and that she feels comforted being with them, and knowing that'll hold a lot of weight.
Okay, and last question, inspired by the title of the film, I was just wondering, what do you find most scary about humans?
Most scary, I think our ability to create and fully believe our own narratives about other people. I think there's no control over that. And it's like not even worthwhile to try and chase it. And I know that's true for me too. I think that's kind of scary, especially in this age of disinformation.
Amy Schumer, congratulations on a beautiful performance in The Humans, and thanks so much for talking to Gold Derby today.
Thank you, David.